Everybody, glad that you're here. I hope you're here. I hope you're all here. Okay, and it's great to see all of you. Some of you you haven't been able to be here. The links are here, and that's great to see them. And Jeff, good to have you back. Emily, we missed you, and glad that you are here with us this morning. Everybody that's here, and actually we've got a good number here this morning, considering our attendance will be undoubtedly down. I'm not trying to be negative or anything, but it will be undoubtedly down because we have so many away this morning, away to CYC, and let's keep them in our prayers and mindful. I prayed for them this morning. I hope you all did, and we will throughout this day, that they'll have a safe trip back to be with us. Hope you have a Bible map. You have a Bible map in the back of your Bible. Maybe if you have, you keep your Bible on your phone, maybe it's a little bit difficult to access a map, but I keep a map with me all the time. If the one on the back of my Bible doesn't suffice, then I try to find one online so I know where all these places are, like Shechem and Succoth and the Jabbok River and Bethel, and where all these important and interesting places are. Just kind of helps you to know the movement of the individuals that we're talking about here. In particular, we're talking about Jacob. So we're looking at the book of Genesis, and Genesis chapter 25 to chapter 50, 50 being the last chapter of Genesis. And we are today beginning with Genesis chapter 33. I will be moving somewhat quickly because we've got the month of March, and we'll cover at least 2 chapters each Sunday in March, but maybe even more. So, but we've got some ground to cover today, and mostly what we're focusing in on here is Jacob, the son of Isaac, the son of Abraham. And when we look here at Genesis chapter 33, the beginning of this, we see the reconciliation between Jacob and Esau, and we talked a little bit about this and how they came together. And remember, Esau, or rather Jacob, offered gifts to his brother Esau. Remember also how Jacob divided his entourage, his clan, shall we say, his family, divided them into different groups just in case Esau had a mind to attack and take them all out. Remember, the last time we saw Esau, he's not a happy camper, okay? He's not happy at all with Jacob and vows to get revenge. Well, these men are much older now. They're at least 20 years older at this stage. And when Esau hears that Jacob and his company have come back home, so to speak, then Esau says, I'm going to go out to meet him, and he's got 400 men with him. So that's a scary situation for Jacob, and he doesn't want to, he's worried about that. He doesn't need to be worried, because why doesn't he need to be worried when he hears about Esau and 400 men are coming out to meet him? Why doesn't Jacob need to be worried about this? Well, because God has said he's going to be with him, and God is going to protect him, and God has not failed to fulfill that promise at all. And so anyway, the two brothers meet, verses 1 through 13, and there's weeping and kissing and hugging and embracing, and all of that is going on in verses 1 through 11. And then it's time, after they have this meeting together, and there's this reconciliation that goes on between the two brothers. Then, beginning in verses 12 through 17, it's time for them to part company. Now, Esau makes a couple of proposals. He says, you've got a big, all of your family and all of your children and all of your livestock, then I'm going to escort you back home. And so you just try your best to keep up. And Jacob says, no, I've got livestock, I've got children. It's just going to be too slow. So I don't need you. I don't need your escort and all that. And so then Esau proposes, well, I'll just leave you a few men. I'll leave a few men with you to help you get all the way. And Jacob says again, no, I don't need that. And so it appears that Jacob is really trying to disengage with Esau, and eventually he is successful about doing that. Esau and his 400 men, they continue to travel back home to Seir and Edom, where they came from. And we read here in chapter 33, verses 18 through 20, okay? Then Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem. Shechem is on the other side of the Jordan River, so he has to cross over the Jordan River from the place where he met Esau, okay? So he is going west, crossing over the Jordan River, and he comes safely to the city of Shechem. And this part of that statement in verse 18 deserves, you kind of make a note of this, okay, because it says, which is in the land of Canaan. All right, so Jacob is proposing that he's going to settle a little bit for a long time, a short time. He's going to land in the land of Canaan. It says he pitched his tent before the city. All right, this is going to spell trouble for him to make this decision. Again, not a lot of prayer going on here by Jacob, not asking God, we've crossed over the Jordan. Is this far enough for me to go? Do I need to keep going south? But not a lot of that is going on. And so verse 19 says he bought the parcel of land where he had pitched his tent from the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. Then he erected an altar there and called it El Elohi Israel, which means God, the God of Israel. Okay, you'll see the name God there twice in that name. So this is the setup for going into the next chapter and the event, the terrible event that is going to happen in chapter 34. He's in the land of Canaan. He is proposing to dwell with the children of Hamor, Shechem's father. All right, so Shechem is a place, but Shechem is a man. Okay, I guess supposedly a young man, not a child, but certainly a young man. So we come to chapter 34, and verses 1 through 4, and just this interesting thing is going to occur here. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. Okay? Now that right there kind of raises some red flags right there. She shouldn't, whether she's alone or not, we don't know for sure, but she's going out to to hang out with the daughters of the land of Canaan. Okay? So these are not her people. Okay? And these are individuals who do not, they're not in tune with God and with God's will. And in fact, the Canaanites are individuals who worship other gods. Okay? This is not a good idea for Dinah to do that. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her, he took her and lay with her and violated her. His soul was strongly attracted to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the young woman and spoke kindly to the young woman. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this young woman as wife." So Shechem took Dinah to himself. Now, the Hebrew, I'm not a Hebrew expert or anything like this, but the Hebrew, from what I've been told, indicates, doesn't necessarily mean that he raped her. I mean, that could have happened. Okay, that could have happened. but it could just mean fornication. It could just mean that. But one thing is very clear. Everyone understands, at least on Dinah's side of the family, that he defiled her. Okay? So this was wrong, whether because he was uncircumcised, because he was a Canaanite. Different reasons could be given as to why we consider that he defiled her, or it could have been rape. But one of the things that is kind of important to notice here, according to verse 17 and verse 26 that we'll run into here, is that he took Dinah, okay? There wasn't just this event that occurred and then he said, okay, go back home and I'll talk to my father and we'll see if we can get married and that kind of thing. No, he actually takes her to his home, okay, which that's not a good thing, okay, that he would have done that. And so he makes this demand, this strong request, shall we say, of his father to get Dinah, Jacob's daughter, to become his wife, okay? And so we find in verses 5 through 7 Jacob's reaction and the reaction of the brothers to what had happened. One of the things that's interesting, although there's not a lot of commentary here, so you kind of have to, in the text there's not a lot of commentary about it, but Jacob doesn't just seem to be just infuriated about it. The brothers, on the other hand, they're infuriated. Okay, they are very angry about what happened to their sister. Jacob, for whatever reason, is a little more controlled about it and doesn't seem to just be crazy looking for revenge. Anyway, verse 6, Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him in order to fulfill this request from his son. And so we read in verse 7 that the brothers are overcome with emotion. They're sad. They are mad about what happened, and it shouldn't have happened. And so they want revenge, and they want recompense. So we find in verses 8 through 12 this proposal for marriage between Shechem and Dinah. Okay, Hamor wants this. He's trying to talk to Jacob, her father, to try to set this up, to try to arrange this thing. But not only does he propose that his son marry Jacob's daughter, but that all of the people in Canaan and all of Jacob's entourage, they all just begin intermarrying with one another and sharing their families with each other. And Hamor says, you can have our daughters for marriage, and we can have your daughters for marriage, and all of that. Now this can't happen. This can't happen because what this does is it will eventually push God out of the picture. And the children of Israel and Jacob himself perhaps will become worshipers of other gods. And that's a no-no. This is one of those incidents, and we're in Genesis, so we've got the 5 other Bible letters and books to look at here. But the emphasis is becoming clear already this deep into the biblical account that God wants nothing to do with idolatry, and he wants us to have nothing to do with idolatry. I have said it before, and maybe you could add to this if you want, but there seem to be 2 things that just, shall we say, get on God's nerves, okay? One of them is idolatry. God is absolutely opposed to idolatry in all of its forms, and he wants us to be. And then the second thing seems to be persecution, the persecution of his people. God takes notice of that. You can call persecution different things. You can call it oppression. but the oppression of God's people, God doesn't like that, and vows, promises to judge those who are in opposition to his people and seek to oppress them. Anyway, what we're seeing here is definitely hints and indications of the fact that God doesn't want his people to intermarry with those who are idolaters. And but this is a part of the story and this interaction, and the question needs to be asked in verses 8 through 12, will Jacob's future now include the Canaanites? And they're all going to become intermarried, and what's going to happen there? Go ahead, Steve. Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe, yeah. I would say not, and the reason why is because keep in mind that Moses is the one who's writing this, okay, and he's writing this primarily, I think it can be concluded, for the benefit of the children of Israel. Now, yes, in the future, Moses and but this is the groundwork for the law of Moses and the law that is given to them by God. You know, you shall have no other gods before me. And they're seeing this transpire in this. Oh, okay. The intermarrying. Okay. Well. Okay. I guess my thing would be yes, but there's been disappointment in regard to Esau intermarrying with the Canaanites, and that doesn't go well with the family. Okay, but now if you're asking, has there been a very specific law not to do it? I'm going to probably, at least from my standpoint, I'll say we don't know. We don't know. We don't know all the laws or truths or principles or guidelines that God has given his people. A little bit in the dark about that. Okay. Yes, very much so. Yeah, very much so. So, anyway, that's the great question. Are they going to intermingle with the Canaanites? And so in verses 13 through verse 34. There is this agreement that takes place between Jacob's sons. Where is Jacob in this negotiation? He's nowhere to be found, okay? At least he's not mentioned here, okay? The sons, out of their anger and they seem to rise to the leadership here of this when it comes to this agreement, whether they should make this agreement. And so they make this agreement, but of course it's deceptive, okay, on the part of Jacob's sons. And so they make this agreement, and it says here in verse 13 that they agree to this deceitfully, that they are going to give over their sister to marry Shechem. But they do set out one condition, okay? One condition, which is kind of interesting here. And that condition is all Hamor, Shechem, and all the men of the Canaanites, they need to be circumcised. Okay? You guys need to be circumcised. Okay? Because this is very important. And what's interesting about this, in my view, is that it is interesting that they put so much emphasis on circumcision for good reason, because this is what God commanded Abraham and all of his generation that follows him, okay, that the males must be circumcised. Okay, so this is important. I get that, all right? But that seems to be what's most prominent to them is circumcision. And the one who made the law about circumcision, the God of heaven, they don't make this demand, all right, now you need to start worshiping the true God. Okay, that's the most important thing. You need to worship the true God, not that you need to have this mark on you. So that's somewhat disappointing. What does that say to you about Jacob and his sons and how they are viewing their interaction, shall I say, relationship with God? That they want to do all of God's will, or they're focused in on this matter of circumcision. This is going to come up later on with the Jews and their interaction with Jesus. Circumcision, that's the main thing. Okay? And later on, even in the history of the early church, this is what's really important, is circumcision. Right? Whether, other matters maybe seemingly are not as important. Anyway, they spoke deceitfully in verses 13 and following, and they had no intention of keeping this agreement of saying, we're going to intermarry with you, shall we say, the Shechemites. We're not going to do that. But they're not saying that. They're saying, if you agree to this circumcision, then yeah, you can have our sister, and you can marry, and we'll all intermarry. Anyway, so the words, verse 18, pleased Hamor and Shechem. And then they go back to the gate of the city, and they tell all of this to the men, and they make it very attractive for the men. They say, look, you're going to be able to marry their daughters, okay? You're going to have access to them, and not only that, but they have a lot of livestock. And he specifically says that livestock is going to become yours, okay? He doesn't really say, we're going to share our livestock with them. He says his livestock, and he's a rich man. Jacob's a rich man. That becomes part of us. Okay. So came to pass in verse 25 when they were in pain after the circumcision process. On the third day of that, the two sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers. Okay. Now they all come from the same mother. Okay. They all come from the so Dinah is special to these two brothers, okay, extra special. One other brother is not mentioned, okay, who is a full brother to Dinah, and who's that? Reuben. All right, Reuben. All right, he's not mentioned. Why he doesn't get in on this, I don't know, but he doesn't. So anyway, Simeon and Levi, they're going to take matters into their own hands. And so they, again, no prayer involved here. No, they're not seeking God's guidance or anything like that. And so they engage in this great barbaric act, and they kill Hamor and Shechem and all the men. And not only that, but they spoil all of the things that they have. They take all their livestock. They take all of their children and all of their wives as captives. And that's the last we hear of them. I don't know what you do with those captives, but that's the last that we hear of what happened to those children and those wives. And Dinah is taken back home. Okay, they take her back home where she belongs. It's interesting to see Jacob and his reaction beginning in verse 30. Again, Jacob kind of low-key, very low-key here, okay? And he says to Simeon and Levi, look at his exact words. You have troubled me by making me obnoxious. Now, maybe a better word would translate that, but you've made me obnoxious, okay? You've made me into a target, basically, among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites, and since I am few in number, they will gather themselves together against me and kill me. I shall be destroyed, my household and I. And yet, he's forgetting all about God said he was going to protect them. God said he was going to be with them. And here is Jacob thinking, oh, now you've made trouble with the Canaanites, okay, and now they're all going to join themselves together, and they're going to come after me, and they're going to kill me, okay, and all of my family. They're gonna do all of this. And so he's fearful about that. He's not, one of the things he doesn't say anything about is Dinah. Didn't say anything about her. He didn't say, well, okay, we're finally getting justice, and Dinah is back home and safe, and we're going to take care of her, and all of this. And I knew that something had to be done. Maybe not what you guys did, but something had to be done. And really what could have been done is, well, there's all kinds of things that could have been done. They could have just kidnapped Dinah and taken her back home, and then everybody else skedaddle and get out of there, get out of Canaan, okay, without having to kill everybody. But anyway, but they said, should he treat our sister like a harlot? And that is kind of ends that chapter, okay? So they killed all these Canaanites, Shechemites, shall we say, and Dinah is saved. Any questions about anything or any comments you want to make? Okay, Bill, please. Ask that question again. I'm not. Yeah. Mm. Well, obviously they didn't kill all the Canaanites. Okay, they couldn't have done that. Well, they killed all the shall we say Shechemites, okay? They killed all of those. How many there were, I don't know. But they didn't kill all the Canaanites because then Jacob would have nothing to fear, okay, that they're going to come after him. So obviously they didn't just kill, who knows how many they killed, we don't know. But, yeah. But anyway, the Canaanites, yeah, they are to be feared by Jacob to a certain extent, but then he should remember, oh, God said he was going to protect me and be with me. So anyway, so sure enough, beginning in chapter 35, there is the command by the Lord in verse 1, time for you to move on, time for you to go south to Bethel. And a good thing to look at your map there and see where Bethel is. This is where Jacob really belongs, here in Bethel. So arise, go up to Bethel, verse 1, and dwell there, and make an altar there to God, who appeared to you when you fled from the face of Esau, your brother, way back then. And Jacob, besides, Jacob has a vow to keep because he made this vow in chapter 28, verses 20 and 22, and chapter 31, verse 13. God, I'm going to return to this place. I'm going to come back to this place. So that's what he does. So we read in verses 2 through 7 that he obeys the Lord, and he gathers all of his family. But one important thing beginning in verse 2, and again, even though the law of Moses is not in effect, okay, you're starting to see, shall we say, hints of that law when it goes into effect. Keep in mind, Moses is writing for the benefit of the children of Israel in his time. That's the first audience that's going to hear the book of Genesis, okay? He's writing for their benefit, and they're reading this history and finding out what's going on, and notice that Jacob rightly, he's stepping up to leadership here, mainly because God intervened and said, Jacob, it's time for you to get a move on, time for you to go to Bethel. And so that's what he's going to do. And he tells everyone in his household and everyone who's with them, put away the foreign gods that are among you. Well, and purify yourselves and change your garments even, he says. And then he goes on and he says, take those foreign gods out of your hands, remove the earrings which are in your ears. And then Jacob, basically, verse 4, he buried them. He buried those idols. And did he take the idols that Rachel had stolen from her father, Laban? Probably. They're taking all the foreign idols away. Now, what this tells us is the Canaanites were the worshipers of other gods. They were. And notice you get the idea that they had not been, Jacob and his family had not been in the land of Canaan very long. And they're already collecting these idols, these foreign gods. It did not take very long for them to be going down the road of false religion there. So Jacob puts his foot down, get rid of the idols, and he buries them, okay? And verse 5, they journeyed, and the terror of the Lord of God was upon the cities that were all around them, and they did not pursue the sons of Jacob. They probably would have, okay? But God put a stop to that and stopped the Canaanites from coming after him. And so they came to Luz, or they came to Bethel in verse 6, which is in the land of Canaan, more of the moving down towards the south. And all the people were with him, just as God directed. He built an altar there, called it the place El Bethel, or El means God, okay? Bethel, Bethel means God, Beth means house. So God, the house of God, is what El Bethel means. In verse 8, we find an interesting statement here about the death of Deborah. Rebecca, his mother's nurse, died. I don't know. Maybe you can help me. I'm not sure exactly what the significance of mentioning this really is. But she's buried below Bethel under the terebinth tree. And the name of this place is called Allon Bakuth. And that actually means weeping for another. So many read this and they surmise that Rebecca was already dead, because she's not going to be mentioned anymore. Okay? Rebecca may have died before Deborah, her nursemaid, or maybe after. Okay? But many believe that Rebecca had already died, and thus the place being called weeping for another, maybe they're actually weeping, grieving for two individuals. And why, if that is the case, why Rebecca is not specifically mentioned, I don't know. And why Deborah is mentioned, I'm not exactly sure. She's been her nurse since way back in chapter 24. Okay, Deborah, and you hardly even notice her in chapter 24. So anyway, in verse 9 through 13, the Lord appears to Jacob and renews the covenant with him. Very important things that are said. Verse 10, your name is Jacob, your name shall not be called Jacob anymore. He's said that before. But Israel shall be your name, one who, again, the word El is in there, right? Okay, one who struggles with God. That is the name of this. After he struggled, after he wrestled with the angel, his name was given to be Israel. So he called his name Israel. Now, we don't have to exclusively call him Israel, because the text itself still continues to refer to him as Jacob. And so either way, Jacob or Israel, but God wants him to have this name, Israel, because it's mentioned often enough. God identifies himself in verse 11 in a somewhat an unusual way. God Almighty. God Almighty. And the last time that God referred to himself in this way is in chapter 17 and verse 1. And he promises that from Jacob will come nations of people and many kings. And that's true, isn't it? Nations will come from him, and many, many people. And I'm going to give you the land that I gave to Abraham and Isaac. And then they went up from that place where he talked with him. Jacob dedicates a pillar of stone and renews the name of Bethel, verses 14 and 15. And then we come to verse 16 through 20. This is an important event, very important event, and that is primarily the death of Rachel in childbirth. Okay, she dies in childbirth, giving birth to Benjamin. It's interesting that before she dies, that she names her son Ben-Oni, which means son of my sorrow. But then Jacob, I don't know, for whatever, he doesn't want him to have that name, okay, to think about that every time he mentions Benjamin or talks to Benjamin, oh, son of my sorrow, So he renames him Benjamin, which means son of my right hand, okay, which right hand, that's important. Benjamin is taking a position of great importance because he's the son of Rachel, his favorite wife, right? Who else? Who else is going to take a position of prominence among the sons? Joseph, okay? Joseph, because he too comes from Rachel, okay? Everything about Rachel, Rachel is the darling of Jacob, to be sure, and those children born to her. Anyway, with the birth of Benjamin, the number 12 is complete, all right? 12 sons of Israel. Jacob sets a pillar on her grave, which is the pillar of Rachel's grave to this day. She dies, by the way, verse 16, just a little bit of distance from Ephrathah, which is Bethlehem. Okay? Bethlehem. Verses 21 through 22 is an interesting event that occurs, but not much comes from this, it seems, and not sure exactly what to make of it, okay? Israel journeyed and pitched his tent beyond the Tower of Eder. Not sure exactly where that is. Doesn't show up on any of the maps, okay? But remember, we're heading towards Bethel, okay? And it happened when Israel dwelt in that land, Reuben, he lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard about it, okay? And that's pretty much all that is said about this incident that occurs, but it's a terrible act that Reuben commits here to lie with Rachel's surrogate. But it is suggested, why does he do this? He does this perhaps to keep Bilhah from supplanting, from taking the place of his mother, Leah, as the head wife. Maybe. Okay? So, because then Bilhah would be in a position of being disgraced. And so, therefore, she would not ascend in prominence over his mother, Leah. Maybe. Who knows what's going on inside their heads and these motivations. But when you go back and you look at chapter 49, or go forward, look at chapter 49, verses 3 through 4, Jacob deprives Reuben of leadership status. Okay, so that's kind of important stuff. And so the six brothers, only Judah, in chapter 49, verses 8 through 12, is going to assume a position of status, okay? And maybe it is a result of all of this stuff that is occurring right here. We end chapter 35 with Jacob's genealogy. We know all of this, but it's important information. The sons of Jacob were 12, so there's this recounting of who these sons are. The sons of Leah, and there are 6 of them. Leah bears more children to Jacob than anyone else. The unfavored wife, okay, who has spent most of her time as Jacob's wife trying to get her husband to love her and care about about her, but I guess to no avail. And then the sons of Rachel are mentioned, Joseph and Benjamin. And then the sons of Bilhah, and then the sons of Zilpah. Dinah is not mentioned because, she's only mentioned in the previous chapter. And no more for whatever reason. Verse 27, Jacob came to his father Isaac at Mamre, which is about 20 miles south of where they were before, if you look at the map. And there, Jacob and Esau and Isaac rather are reunited. Okay, the first time we're reading about this, and very little is said about it. Okay, and kind of interesting. Okay, that very little is said about that, and they go to this land, Hebron. Okay, not Hebron, Kentucky, of course, but Hebron here in the land of Canaan, where Abraham and Isaac had dwelt. Not the days of Isaac. No, now the days of Isaac were 180 years. Okay, so Isaac breathed his last and died and was gathered to his people, being old and full of days, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. So when it says here, is gathered to his people, that's just a sign, a phrase that is used often enough in Genesis to denote kind of a position of honor, okay? He gathers to his people. He goes to rest with his people, and that's what happened. Again, Rebekah will be buried here in this place, in the cave of Machpelah. He is, Jacob, or rather Isaac, is buried where Abraham and Sarah are buried. Rebekah is to be buried here as well, although we have no record of when she died. And then Jacob and Leah will be buried here also. Again, another interesting point, okay? Rachel is not buried in this place, okay? She's already been buried close to Bethlehem. But Jacob and Leah, the unfavored wife, will be buried in this position of place of honor. Our time is up. Got one more minute, and that's a good place, I guess, to stop. I said before, we won't spend a lot of time. I will mention one or two important things in chapter 36, okay? But basically, we're looking at the genealogy, the progeny of Esau, okay? And where the Edomites are coming from, and the Amalekites, and the Midianites, where those people are coming from, and Israel needed to have that information, okay, because they were going to encounter them later on after their escape from Egypt. They were going to come into this land and have to deal with the Edomites and Midianites and Amalekites.